Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Behind the Workflow. I am Simona Costantini.
And I'm Taly Melo.
And today's episode is brought to you by Northflow, the content planning platform built for podcasters, agencies, and creators who manage multiple shows. If you're tired of duct taping your tools together, Northflow helps you map out your episodes, track production stages, and collaborate with your team in one place. And today, we are so excited to have Jullian on the podcast with us today. He's a podcast creative strategist, producer, and co-founder of Podvision. He's worked behind the scenes on branded podcasts for Coca-Cola, TurboTax, and Olaplex, nonprofit productions for YBCA and ICA, and indie series like Crafted and Teaching Through Emotions. Jullian blends a design-first background in video and UX with a love for automation and a deep respect for creative flow. He's now building tools and workflows that help podcasters scale without compromising their vision. And today he's going to join us to pull back the curtain on how it all gets done. So Jullian, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to get into our conversation today, to dive into your creative brain, and especially when it comes to how you think about show structure and standout formats. And it's really cool to interview someone with a background like yours, because I feel like you've had a lot of creative endeavors, a lot of different things that you can share with us today. The first question is, you're all about standout show concepts. What do most podcasters get wrong when it comes to format and creative structure?
That's a really good question. And I think that there isn't really one big thing. But I think with my experience so far in podcasting, there's a couple of things that stand out usually. The first thing is that I feel like oftentimes podcasters have a disconnect with what their audience wants. So you'll have a great idea, you'll have this concept that you really feel passionate about. And I think that that's where all good shows should start. But I think also for any sort of niche or topic or passion that the podcaster has, there is an almost matching audience out there that is just waiting to hear about that show and waiting to jump in. Mm-hmm. And so where I really love to get into with podcasters I work with is before we start production. I really try, if I can convince a podcaster to pause on production before we get into it, I will do everything I can, because then we can just sit down a little bit, analyze that concept, analyze that vision, see what it's doing for the listener, see how the format stands as far as interest for people who are listening, and also as far as how it's going to be for them to make it. So is it repeatable? Is it gamified? Is there something playful about it, or is there something very serious about it? How do you sort of build into the format a relationship with your audience? I think there's a lot of questions that you can skip very quickly. So that's sort of where these show concepts and visions come in. And it's just so fun to bounce off ideas when it comes to that.
Can I ask really, really quick one follow-up question to this? Because we're going to go in a different direction in just a second, but I really want to know, because a lot of the podcasts that you hear, especially in specific genres, they're all the same. They all follow the same format. They all have the same things. What could be one or two things that our listener right now could do to kind of break out of the mold of the traditional way a podcast is set up? Because a lot of podcasters that I work with in my agency, they want to do something different. They want to do something creative. They want to do something out of the box. Do you have one tip that you would leave someone even for them to step outside of that box, outside of the traditional?
So I think number one is that a lot of people go into it solo, and that might depend on their background, whatever it might be. I think that people might struggle with asking questions. Mm-hmm. And I think that one great way to apply any format that's going to be more interesting than just like a basic back and forth is going to be to have a co-host. I think that allows you to be a lot more agile in how you ask questions, have one person ask a certain type of questions, the other one does the other. And I think that's just a very quick way to think, okay, would this show benefit from having a co-host where you can add a little bit of banter, but it's not just a superficial banter. You can actually help a lot with the format along by simply working with someone else. I would say also do something interesting with the format of the show as far as sections go. And I think that thinking about it a little bit like a newsletter can help, where typical newsletters will have, of course, you have your body of text for whatever the issue is centered about. That's what's going to be in the title. But then you have your sections where you have like your quick hits, your small promotions, your just like, oh, here's something I love this week. I think that also getting creative in that direction helps a lot with shows, and will also help you then create more content around the show, aka like linking posts based on a portion of the show, etc.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yes. And I totally see how that would help a little bit, like make every episode a little different when you have a co-host. And I can see that here. I'm glad to have Simona for sure.
You know, it's so funny. Taly, he said, like, think of different questions that you can ask each other. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, I like the one-off like questions. I'm like, I wonder what questions, if we were to boil it down, like which ones would I ask versus you ask? It's such a good thought starter. Anyways, you go ahead.
Yes. So I want to jump a little bit into the workflow, like just understanding a little bit behind what you do. Like, let's say you're working with a new client. I know you mentioned that you like to kind of pause the production before you guys continue. So if you could expand a little bit more on that, what is the one thing that you guys always do with every single client, and why do you think that's important? And go a little deeper into possibly, is there something that you prefer not to do when a client says, oh, I usually do this and this, and you're like, oh, maybe this is not the right client for us, and so on.
Okay. Yeah. So from what I'm understanding of the question, you sort of asked about that first portion of creative direction, vision and whatnot that I do with clients, and then the overall workflow, which sort of breaks down into two. The first one is kind of easy to answer, which I'll get to the other one later. I think that, okay, what I love to do is it starts out as a strategy session, and this is after we've already talked, we're ready to sign and whatnot, but we're really just going to sit in a meeting, and I'm going to be essentially challenging their show concept a little bit. It's a gentle challenge, but something that's going to help them like think a little bit more. Usually they'll be like, oh, like I didn't think about that, or that sounds like a good direction. Then I will use the transcript from that meeting to draft up a form that's specific for the client, that's going to be asking them follow-up questions about how they want to get things set up. And so I have boilerplate questions in there of tools you want to use, of how much care you want to put into video, etc. And I also have very personal questions about this where, okay, we discussed this during the meeting. For that reason, obviously, I've got all of my meetings transcribed. So I might not record the actual audio, but I have them transcribed. And that just allows me to plug into my tools and be able to get a ton out of those, just like the in-person connection. And this leads into the second part of your question, which is what's the process like in general of our workflows? I love to have workflows in the background that allow me and my clients to spend more time like this. So like when we step into a meeting, nobody needs to take notes because obviously we have a note taker, and nobody needs to like take notes of their like action items. And also, we have specific prompts already ready based on what we're going to say in the meeting to just create the things we might need to do. So like, is it a script? Is it just an outline? So some technical aspects of the production process. So I think that's where a lot of our workflows shine, is because they are recorded and they're automatically sent to our Notion in this case. And there's a bunch of things that get done in the background from that. But yeah, like, I think that's been one of the most fun part for me about using workflows and AI for podcasting, is that we can spend more time in meetings, which, are sort of mini podcasts that nobody listens to, except for the AI in this case. Yeah.
Exactly. You talked about using different tools and all of that and Notion. And it's so funny. Like I've tried to love Notion, but I'm not someone who can like use it properly. So I think I don't use it to its full potential, which is why it's always been so challenging for me to use. If you take a look at your...
That's funny.
Is it? Why? Tell me.
Because Northflow looks Notion-esque.
That's so interesting.
I would say so. I think there's a lot of your visual language that is Notion-esque, I must say.
Maybe
I like that.
Built it a lot simpler so that my brain can use it. Because here's what's interesting too, and I'll share this with you too. So before I got brought on to the Northflow team, they had started creating the product like well before I joined. And when they started creating the product, simultaneously, we didn't know this at the time, but simultaneously I had hired someone to help me create what Northflow is, but I couldn't get to it. And I was trying to create it on Notion, and it was causing me all these issues. And I kept getting these like loops, and I'm like, this isn't it though. I'm like, I know that there's something, and I had hired someone to try and help me build it out, and we couldn't figure out how to build it out in a way that actually worked properly and like took all of the agency processes. So it's funny that you say that, because it could just be that it's, for my brain, simpler to take it and to process it and to actually use it. So interesting.
That is super interesting. I think that when it comes to building out workflows, I have a ton of issues with, you can get lost very easily
Yeah.
in things that don't really matter. And yeah, I think that's what I might have been worried about what you were just saying. To get into Notion and you're just diving into something like super complex that might have like multiple moving parts. In my process, I found that, I mean, if I had discovered Northflow 6 months ago, it would have been a like no-brainer. I would have just gone ahead and like started using it. Now it's like you're gonna have to compete with what I've got already as I'm testing it out, just because I feel like organically, as I was working on shows, I was able to just make it work little by little. Yeah.
Exactly. And you like piece it together in some ways. And also too, as you are using Northflow, like I will just throw in there, we're happy to like literally create your whole workflow for you and build the whole thing out in the way that you would want to. But I mean, we can talk about that afterwards. But I do want to know from your whole,
Appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. From your whole production workflow, what does it look like, your workflow from the planning piece all the way to publish?
Like the tools
Okay.
that you use for those as
Yeah.
well. Besides Notion, what else do you use?
Of course, I tend to, for anything like scripting, just exchanging ideas and whatnot, yeah, that's in Notion. That's nothing new. I mean, my clients tend to use Riverside or Descript, Squadcast for recording. And that's where sometimes a lot of the frustration comes in and whatnot. But these are good tools and they're decently reliable. The recording process tends to be fairly simple. I think that a lot of the checks are just like, does your video look good? Does your sound sound good? Which is kind of outside of the tool itself. I have been doing video in tools like Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve for the past 5 years, but I think I have not, I mean, I touched them here and there, but I've basically been doing editing everything in Descript for the past couple of years, just because it's so much easier to work together with other people in Descript, and it's also easier to get comments on the edits you have and whatnot. And so like besides things like mixing and mastering and just making sure the audio is perfect, Descript, I'd say, does a pretty good job now. And they've launched all of those weird underlord features as of recent that are fun to play with, even though they're a little bit dumb at the moment. So typically, I tend to be able to get an entire episode out, just export it from Descript, check the mixing and mastering, and then upload it. And so for most of my shows, that's enough, which makes it that it simplified things. If I even compare it to, say, 5 years ago, then it'll go onto their posting at that point. In between, I have been very like confidently using AI tools to upscale the audio. So most of my interviews are just like this. They're remote interviews. Sometimes the guest doesn't have great audio. Sometimes even the hosts don't have great audio because they might not be like full-time podcasters or whatnot for whatever reason. And so it just solved headaches or anxiety around that, where even if your audio is subpar, it should be really easy to just run through something like DX Revive or Adobe Podcast Enhance. I'm gonna shout out AI Acoustics because it's like a startup and it's a European company, which is closer to me.
All in for
They
startups.
seem to, yeah, they've got some great models that are coming out with every month, basically. Yeah, I don't know if I'm missing anything, but basically behind that, I also use make.com to create my actual like automations. And this would be whether they're AI powered or not, whether there's a ChatGPT node in there or not, it doesn't matter. I use make.com for that. And then I've got NA10 as well installed locally for anything that needs access to my local files, because that's actually where it gets very useful. And I can tell you a little bit more about that later. And then I have the extension I'm building. So basically I had a bunch of script in a folder. You can double click on the script and it'll open up it'll turn on some shortcuts that I was using in Descript. And those have just been very useful to Like if I was working at Descript, this would be feature number one, but the feature request doesn't get me there quite fast enough.
So you just started building it on your own. I love that.
This is an example. One very straightforward thing for me is that if you want to create a multicam of your podcast, at the basis for me is that it should switch to the speaker when that speaker starts speaking. And if you do the automatic multicam, that's not quite what they do. And that's just frustrating. So it's just a series of sequences where it just goes to the next speaker, adds a scene, goes to the next speaker, adds a scene until the end of the file. And then if I want to add some fancy like J cuts, L cuts, if I want to cut away to a reaction, I can add that later. But if that's my base, like I would be very happy to just have that be like a dumb multicam and then work my way from there. Yeah.
I love that. I'm an avid Descript user. We're recording in Descript right now, and we use it for everything in our agency. And I absolutely love it. It has simplified production so much. You do still need, external tools, especially some things, if you need to clean up different audio and stuff like that. But I absolutely love this because I don't do a whole lot of editing anymore within the agency. But when I do, Emily, who's our lead editor at the agency and who also edits this podcast as well, she is so good at all the back and forth and the cuts and the this and the that. When I try and do it myself, I'm like, this is annoying because I'm like, it doesn't pull it automatically. It doesn't pull the right person to the screen. And I'm like, I feel like it should. Like you would think that if you hear voice, you would pull that person anyway. So it's very interesting, but don't get me off on the Descript tangent. I'm gonna have to stop myself right here because I could go all day. We'll turn this whole episode.
I will add to that. I've got personal beef with Studio Sound in Descript. That is I don't know if they pulled the oldest audio like upscale algorithm in the book, something from 1995, but it is absolutely bad. Please fix that Descript.
It honestly is. And so sometimes like we'll use it and I have to put it at 12% because I can't put it all the way, like max 60%. Because if you put too much, then you're losing so much stuff and it sounds pixelated. It's in a tin can. And I'm like, what is happening here? But then there's not a whole lot of additional, you can adjust the EQ and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there isn't a whole lot else. So then you got to take the audio. So we use Adobe as well for the really complex ones. But, you can't take a recording of someone that sounds like they're in a fishbowl and perfect it only with Descript. Like it's very, very challenging to do that. So anyway, yeah.
It is. That's when you have to treat all of the audio right before you import it, which even actually at this point makes me not want to use Descript for recording because now you're recording in Descript. The advantage of that is you can just one-click import into Descript. But now I have to download out of Descript, use another software, and then bring that back in. I might as well use another software to begin with.
Very true.
That might be more convenient for that.
Very true. Which is usually what we do with, other podcasts. This is the only one that this one in my personal podcast I record in here, but everything else is client stuff. They're all using Riverside. Some people use Zoom and I'm like, oh my God. But whatever the least barrier to entry to get it done. But I'm like, oh my God. And, I had a client the other day ask me do you think that I could just use Zoom? It's probably good enough, right? And I'm like, no, it's not good enough. It's not. I'm like, you can't use it. I'm like, please don't use it. Anyway.
Not at all.
Anyways, this is not I'm off my audio soapbox.
Do all your clients use Northflow right now?
We're in the process of onboarding all of them into the process. So I would say almost there.
How much of a headache has it been?
I think my biggest challenge has been my own self. Because I have, in my mind, I've made it so much more chaotic, kind of how you were saying earlier with Notion. You have to pull me away from the process. So we have our process right now. Well, the process that we were using before. Do I think it's the best process? No. Do I think it's the one that it causes way more headache? Yeah. Do I think it's collaborative? No. You know what I mean? It caused me so many external messages, messages on WhatsApp, messages on text message, emails, all this stuff, because there's no centralized place, right? And, I had used Trello before. Then I moved things into ClickUp. But when I moved things into ClickUp, was also okay, well, I'll just move everyone into Northflow. So for me, it's been mostly my own mindset of how am I going to get everyone up to speed? How am I going to make sure everyone is done and good to go? But that's just a mindset thing. You know what I mean? Once you're through that and you have your process set up and you have your templates ready to go and everything is just working, you may have a couple of questions to field here and there, but it does everything that I need it to do. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
bottlenecked it a lot, for sure. 100%. Taly's probably so
And
happy that I'm
also,
saying
we've
this. No, I'm
only
just kidding.
been and we also have only been technically alive for the past 6
Yeah.
weeks. Like we launched June 15, June
Yeah.
16
Congratulations.
of
Thank you.
2025. Thank you. So yes, we're still getting a lot of people onboarded. Like even the founding members, like the people that's been with us since day one, like following the process as we were building in public with the community. A lot of them, we're still getting them onboarded. So one of the things that I usually like to mention to everyone that I talk to is, okay, whatever your next episode is, that's the one you're starting on Northflow. And then once you have that first episode, you go through it, you can technically create a template out of that. And then that's it. That's all you have to do from now on. You would just be reusing the template, which brings me actually to my next question, Jullian, because you talked about templates earlier. So I wanted to ask about like your SOPs. Like, have you been able to build like a good SOP or like templates for every single show that you guys manage, or like what's the process on that? Or like how do you create system that actually scale with your clients and also based on different shows as well?
That's an amazing question because honestly, it's a work in progress. I think that what you're experiencing is the same thing I'm experiencing. Sometimes you gotta make your clients and just like other people just dip their toes into the system and the template and just like one thing, just like do one thing in this system. It could do more, but just do one thing for now. Once you're comfortable with that, we'll just ease you into the next one. Talking about like SOPs and templates, the main one I am sort of arriving at right now as far as like making a podcast, it's kind of the solution you're looking for and you're building, right? It's fairly similar. There is a template of, okay, some content is very templatable and very easy to work with. I found that podcasting is a little bit harder and it's a little bit more like granular. You got to be specific with your clients. But I have sort of arrived at something that I like, and I can really feel that it's going in the right direction, right? One of the things I do like about Notion, and I do have a question about Northflow later about this, is that the way that webhooks are integrated into your tables and your data and whatnot, and you can send things back to like a different service or make.com and all of those things and just send it back and forth is really good. And it's allowed me to sort of set up databases for podcasting that almost work. Right now, I feel like they almost work. And it's actually started to reduce friction. Friction is this weird thing. Like in the quest of removing friction, you're going to have to cause some at first. And it sort of feels like sending something like, well, as you're sending, you're sort of feeling a ton of friction. And what I've got right now, so I've got a table for a lot like in Northflow, a table for an episode that has each field for it and the typical things that we have that might be titles and show notes, something with the script, something with the transcript, etc., and so on. And a lot of the things that we do in Notion is just assigning tasks. So whenever something is done, getting reminded or getting told that, okay, the release date is at this time, 3 weeks before, we should have the first edit, something like that. And so getting that sent out automatically would be great. The other thing that I really like is that I was able to set up a second table where each item in that table, so the second table is for prompts, and each item in the table is a field in the first table. This is sort of a little funny. So let's say an episode has titles, show notes. So I've got a second table called prompts that has a line that says the prompt for a title and the prompt for show notes. And so I'm able to input the prompt, the templates I want to use, the writing guide, words to avoid, etc., right here in that second table. And so with the press of a button in the first one, those prompts sort of get reused automatically without people having to go to ChatGPT, Claude, etc., etc. It's less specialized, as I'd say, than something dedicated like Northflow, but the fact that everything is sort of on one page in a way that has been very easy to scan has helped a ton.
And is that just for like one episode? I'm just trying to visualize as you're saying it. So you have this database on Notion, and this table is specifically for one episode or for the whole show,
For the
for
whole
all
show.
the episodes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
got it.
it'll be like, 101, 102 until 1 12 and then 201, etc., etc. Each line has that. And what I love is that you can have different views. So you can have the main view that's just like a mess, and you've got 25, 35 columns. And then and I like to have a writer's view that's just for somebody whose job is to write and review things like titles, show notes, and whatnot, the metadata. I've got an editor's view for somebody who just needs to access the recording links from Riverside and who needs to upload the audio and the video file, etc. And this is very Northflow-esque as well, where I did see that you've got all of those tabs right there. But I like that idea that even though what this really felt like a complicated and complex process 6 months ago, it's sort of become very familiar and easy because I've got to repeat it, I think, at this point 4 times with 4 different clients. And it's sort of like, you know how every crustacean just evolves into a crab? That's sort of how it feels, where all of them just sort of shape up to be this one page that's got everything.
Yes. I do have to say one thing. I love Notion. Like, I've been using Notion. Let me tell you a story. Whenever we started building Northflow, all of our tasks, we were managing that through Notion. Like, everything was there. It was like our project management tool, basically. And then Fran, which he's one of our founders, one of our co-founders, he was like, well, I just learned about this tool. It's called Linear, and it's specifically for product teams. And we're like, oh, but we already have everything set up on Notion, but let's give it a try. So we went on Linear, and it was like, we didn't even have to think about those little things. It just made sense. Like, I was able to put a task and connect it to a specific team, and it just flew perfectly. And I wish Fran was here to tell the whole story because he was the one that basically pushed us into Linear. We still use Notion, but Linear just made more sense for what we were building at the time, like for a product team that's building a platform. And that was kind of like our thinking with Northflow. Notion is great, and I still love it. I still use it for like recipes and all sorts of things, but it can be a bit sensitive. Like, I'm thinking whenever you're getting people that's new to your team, if they're not tech savvy, they might not fully understand, and there will be like the whole onboarding and try to get them in to understand how you set those up. But for some people it works great, and for some others it could be a bit too much. But one thing that I wanted to actually bring into, I'm curious, like a little bit of like, how do you manage like your team?
Our team is very lean. It's only 2 of us co-founders at this point, and a couple of like contractors we've brought on specific projects. And typically that's been like a pretty limited task. We do so much of the work ourselves, and it's actually been like so much this summer. And I think we're really getting into this space right now. It's like, okay, we need some people full time. So I really feel like in a few months, I'll be able to answer this question with actual value. But right now I'm like, oh, what much more could I say that hasn't already been said on this podcast?
100%. Well, we're going to have you back. And I feel like I literally could talk to you all day about all kinds of different things in the industry. And I feel like a unique kind of angle that you have, so many different things that I love that's so unique about you and the way that you do your work. But I love the creative process. I love the creative idea. Can I ask you really quick, do you prefer working with indie creators or bigger brands?
Oh, okay. I mean, I think that as a creative partner, there's nothing like working with a small or medium company or like an indie brand. There's nothing like that because, first of all, the creative person on the other side who you're partnering with is also the person taking the decisions at the end of the day. If there is a legal aspect or like an HR aspect and whatnot, that might be limiting. That's just one person away. In terms of the creative process, even though there isn't the same type of budgets or the same type of ambition that you can have with that type of show, I think that the ability to help somebody shape their show has been so satisfying these past couple of years. And I don't know if that's been the same experience for you, Simona, but yeah, like I've definitely found myself in shows where you're a small-ish cog in the machine, which tends to be like a very nice cog to be. And the people you talk to are just as excited, usually working with people who really want to make a great podcast. There is nothing to take away from that. However, there's also a lot that just isn't in the cards when you're working with big brands and decisions that you can't take. Without getting too much into it, that's what I'd say.
That's such a good answer. I absolutely love that because there's like an ability to be so much more creative and so much more nimble with a smaller team. And then when you start to get into the corporate side, you have so many different hoops that you have to jump through. You have clearances that you have to do. Like I've worked with different celebrity clients, and even that I was like, oh my gosh, like they just want to talk about this one thing, and this one thing needed like 17 layers of clearance. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm like, that's fine, I guess, but and I understand, because obviously everything is about, you know, your brand and your image and all of that stuff at the end of the day. But there's such a creative freedom that comes with having a podcast, right? But then everything also reflects the brand.
I was just going to add that the stakes also feel like are right there, which as a partner makes you feel like you want to care and you want to be present. And those stakes also make it that the person themselves is very open to trying something, you know, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think of someone who's trying to scale their show or their creative studio, where would you suggest that they start when it comes to building out a better system? Obviously get Northflow, but what else? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
Yeah, no, step one is getting a platform that's going to work for you that way. And I can't be your mouthpiece yet because I have not tried it enough.
True.
But I echo that. I think that a lot of it comes down to the systems. And I think that if you've got a podcast and you've got some time on your hands, there's a ton of things that you want to look at even before you look at your systems. I think that's the reality of it. I think systems are so important, but there's things that like, oh, if you're urgently trying to grow your show, that might not be the first thing to do. But systems really help you be sustainable so you can grow over time.
Yeah.
I think that podcasters would benefit a lot from identifying the things in their podcast processes that are repeatable and templatable. So this would be, and this is usually pretty quick to do, but then further than that, especially if you've got writers in your team, work together to create the prompts that you can then just plug into ChatGPT for now if you're not going to use some advanced like automations. That's not for everyone. That's not step one for everyone. Those can get technical. I think that having great prompts is so important because, I mean, they call it prompt engineering, whatever, but I think that there's actually something really good about knowing how to structure a prompt. And I think writers are actually the best people to do that. Like this, it's funny because a couple of years ago, writers were like the first ones to go in the AI epidemic and whatnot. I think that writers can actually make the best prompt engineers. And that's a skill that they could bring to the table right now. On top of that, then you also have to sit down and think about what type of context each of those prompts need. If you're handing an edit off to an editor, people are very used to have like pre-edit notes to already send with the raw files because, you know, you need to tell your editor, okay, I thought about this while I was recording. So I think if you're able to do that or do that during a meeting, I think that would be great. And in my processes, this can annoy some other people. I would love to jump on a 30-minute meeting about every single episode where we just discuss how the recording went and like what we want the episode to be, because naturally that would give probably 5 tasks AI has to do the perfect context to go on. But it's just like a 30-minute meeting where it's like face-to-face, you're connecting, etc. I think that's my go-to.
I love that. I do a 30-minute meeting at the top of every month with every single client, and we go through all of their episodes. Because while you can't do every single episode and debrief every single one, we do like to go and make sure, like, what kind of questions are you asking this person? Are you actually framing the interview in the way that you want to? Is there something that might be missing? And we've come up with so many cool angles and so many cool things by doing that.
Smart.
Thanks. You can totally steal it. Jullian?
Yeah. I think I will.
I think you should. Go ahead.
I have just a quick comment real quick. Whenever we start building all of the AI features on our Northflow, I would love to sit with you and get some ideas on what you're already doing and see how we could implement that on Northflow as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That'd be
100%. I would love to just exchange a little bit more on these technical things that we might not be able to get into, because I want to learn as well, like how do you guys solve XYZ? Northflow looks like a great product.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We need to do an episode with you and Fran.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
That
fun.
would be so fun. Jullian, as we come to a close today, where can our listener find you and connect with you? And if you want to give like a 2 to 5 second overview of what you're building and where they can learn more about it, that would be fantastic.
You said 2 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That's going to be...
Okay, 1 minute.
No. Okay. All right. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's where I've been the most active. I'm hoping to be doing a lot more for people, but I feel like on LinkedIn is just going to be for us to exchange online, and then we're going to be able to just see each other in person sometime. So I'm building an extension. I'm building an extension that's going to be gathering all of the automations, the macros, the AI tools and workflows that I've built. And this is not a plug for your competitor, because this extension is built to plug into podcasting tools. So people use different tools already. They're very comfortable with them, but I have seen in my own life that there's a ton of gaps that are very frustrating and that can be solved with a little bit of coding. Not everybody has it, so I'm building that extension. And I'm planning as well on starting a newsletter where I'm going to be talking about this. And your newsletter is going to be the one I plug into my AI to let me know exactly how to beat you. But yeah, I'm excited to just share all of this thoughts in that newsletter. Look out for that. And I'm going to be releasing, it's called the Podcasters Toolkit right now. I might change the name, but basically, yeah, it's going to be a Chrome extension you can install, and you're going to be able to just plug into everything that you already do podcasting with.
That is so cool.
That's such a smart idea. Like saving time inside the tools creators are already using. So it's really great. I can't wait to see it and possibly give it a
I
try.
love it.
Yeah, I hope you do.
Absolutely.
I hope you do, and I hope it's useful.
Absolutely. I'm happy to test that anytime you want with all of the things, to just let me know. Jullian, thank you so much for being here today. We so appreciate your time, and it's been amazing having you.
Yeah, no, this has been so much fun. I want to talk more.
I know. Thank you so much, Jullian. And thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Behind the Workflow. And we will see you next week, same time, same place. Bye for now.